Hi, my name's Antony and I'm from Coventry. My experience before I got help with mental health, particularly in the workplace, was quite a miserable one because you don't know who to trust. You don't know whether or not HR is going to side on the management, which it generally does. I would go to work and try and sort of really select my masks for the day, depending on who I was working with. There is a toxic alpha society in the workplace that we work in. That's not just reflecting as well towards men. If men sometimes behave aggressively, and that attitude of if you can't beat them, join them is seen by anyone, whether it's women or any gender, they will try and behave in that way as well. So the whole thing can be quite dangerous really if you copy and emulate behaviours like that. You've got to be true to yourself, but that requires a courage because there's consequences. My experience with mental health is pretty much a constant really, because I've experienced depression in my life as an adolescent and later on as an adult. So your first experience of mental health and depression keeps you very alert, keeps you monitoring your reactions to social situations in the workplace, peer pressure systems like going out with a bunch of lads, behaving in sort of expected ways or ways that you want to. There's always a permanent conflict. So these things sometimes, each individual part of your life that you're not dealing with well sort of culminates really into a stress system, and you can't really cope with it. So you need to keep your eye on it all the time. That's what I've learned from it. Who helped me really was my wife. She, at the worst situation in 2017 when I had planned to take my own life in a hotel, I'd planned everything, even a list of music to listen to. I didn't want to be found at home. I think looking back, what led me to that hotel room was a combination of things that I couldn't control. I didn't feel like I was worthy of the help. I prided myself on helping myself, but I felt like I could no longer do that. The problem was that I didn't really know how to get help. In the end, my wife's constant questions and persistence and love in seeing that I wasn't well. And when I say I wasn't well, it isn't somebody that's going around crying. It's somebody that actually is just maybe, in my case, very, very distant in the eyes, or going to bed early, feeling very tired early, just not being yourself. It's so important to have somebody that knows your true inner core. And that was very sad, because obviously I told my wife what I planned to do, and she literally, I just saw the colour drain from her face, and we got through it, you know, through just simple, good old-fashioned, you know, cuddles, love, listening, discussing, reflecting, and proactively planning together how we were going to move forward from it. And it wasn't difficult in the end, because by going on citalopram, which is what I did, I didn't look at it as a failure. I looked at it as a stepping stone to get me over that, you know, burning bridge, that desperate situation, that place that I couldn't leave. I felt like I was wading through glue. It was horrible. It's very important to feel supported in the workplace, because you spend the majority of your life there, and you spend the majority of your life there with people you don't choose. So you are captive in that, you know, company, and that company, if it's toxic, can be very damaging, not just to you, to everyone, but particularly you. So you have to, in my opinion anyway, if you're not happy in the workplace and there is a toxic working atmosphere, you just got to get out. Because if you happen to go down that route of proving this and proving that, it's the end game is ultimately always going to end up on the side of the company. But the difference is you've put yourself through a huge trauma. I think sometimes you just got to accept that the workplace is a little bit like the playground, and you've got to find the right place for you. A few years ago, a friend of mine committed suicide. I went into work shortly after Christmas, just upset, a bit withdrawn. We were close friends, and a friend of mine in the workplace said, "You're a bit quiet today, Antony." And I said, "Yeah, I've lost a friend over the new year, and yeah, she took her own life. She lost the one battle. She won hundreds, but she lost the one battle against depression, and we're all so shocked." And later, the office manager said, "Well, she deserved it because she's got a kid." And I got no sympathy for her swearing. And she'd been outspoken before, and I, for once, didn't say anything. I was so shocked. And I carried that with me for a couple of hours, and I was very angry, I was fuming, but I couldn't articulate myself. I drove home, pulled over, called my managing director and said, you've got to do something about this isn't on. And he agreed, but said, he'd call me back, and then called me into the office actually on my birthday. Actually ended up meeting in a pub instead, where he said, "Let's talk about your performance." There was nothing wrong. I've never had any problem in all the years I've worked for, and I worked there for many years. And you owe me a duty of care. You've not fulfilled it. Somebody has basically dishonoured my friend who had experienced, extreme difficulties in her life. And that was that. The stigma of it there is obviously that people who commit suicide are cowards and not worthy of sympathy. And I called it out, and it had a huge consequence. I was unemployed for 6 months. It sparked off a massive depression. And what I said earlier, you see, this is the key thing here. When people get stigma in the workplace wrong, or when people are insensitive or cruel in the workplace in a position of authority, they don't know what the consequences are because they just get legalistic, or they fill in a form and everything. What actually happens is those people go back and try and process this, and they can't deal with it. They can't have an argument over a pint. It doesn't happen like that in the workplace. So the other people have to deal with it, and you lose. That's the thing. You win because you've stuck up for your friend, but you lose because you can't work there anymore. And each experience like this is like Pompeii ash. In Pompeii, it was the rooftops that killed a lot of the people by this very, very light ash that kept falling on the rooftops. And every flake of ash eventually made the whole buildings collapse and people suffocate. It's a good analogy because that's what depression is like. Lots and lots of little pieces of ash until they create a huge weight together. And that's what that created. It sparked off a major depression in me. The steps managers can make to help reduce stigma can be by talking to people, not at them, and trying to recognise people as individuals. You're going to be dealing with many different types of people. You're going to deal with some people that are extroverts, some people that are introvert, and they've got to all coexist in the workplace. So it's the responsibility for me of the manager to make sure that they are tailoring their management to an individual right from the start, and not expecting everybody to fall in line. Because that very energy sometimes where people, when they show a lot of character, let's just say, for instance, they're going to want that on the phone calls to, people, whether it's negotiating with customers, they're going to want passion, they're going to want all those wonderful things that make us human beings. But sometimes what can happen in the workplace is that somebody might compare somebody to Gary, who's the top seller or something, and they're not capable of being like Gary. They do things their own way, but they're expected to read a brochure on how to sell, for instance, and it doesn't work like that. You have to empower people, give them confidence, listen to them, make sure that you're there for them and you're providing a space for them, and you don't come across like you're just ticking a box, because people can sniff that out. People know when people are being helped or managed out, and people need to know in management that they set the examples to follow, and if they abuse those right from the start, then people aren't going to respect them. I think what we need to do is we need to, in the workplace, recognise that mental health trumps everything. It trumps absolutely everything. You need to wean people in management to unlearn what they think they know and learn what they need to know. Because what's going to happen is that if people are depressed in the workplace, they're going to go off sick. They're going to look for new jobs. They're just not going to be happy. They're going to go home. They're not going to be the best husband or the best wife or the best mum or the best dad that they can be. That's not fair. We work very long hours. We work really hard. And look at the amount of people on citalopram and sertraline now. It is astonishing. We're not oversensitive. Sometimes the world is insensitive. And I think that particularly in the workplace as well, again, just going back to that, there needs to be more training about mental health, because we don't get training at school. We just get, we go from being a child and then an adolescent and then this constant behavioural chrysalis into adulthood. And then we're just expected to go into the world alone, and there's no information map. So it's very, very difficult. We're not going to be saved by the NHS. We're not going to be saved by the government. Who we can be saved by are corporations and managers, where we spend most of our time. So they have to invest. And it's not always down to money. You can be creatively minded in creating maybe get-together groups once a week, mental wellbeing coffee breaks, and giving something back to people. And you get so much more out of people by just being kind. If I could change and improve the workplace attitude towards mental health, I think it would be educating management really in terms of how special their workplace is, in terms of how many individuals they have, what qualities they can bring to the team, not what's on a form, but almost redefining, revisiting that team, because something clearly has been lost. If the workplace dynamic isn't working, or if there's a conflict, those people are employed by that company. So something's gone wrong at some point. It could be a credit crunch. It could be, somebody has lost somebody at home and feels like they can't talk about it in the workplace because you don't bring your problems into work, right? So you have to have, you can't be exclusive. You've got to be inclusive to people. You've got to incorporate mental health in the workplace, because even machines break down. Even you will invest thousands of pounds on virus software for your computers. Why wouldn't you do that with your workplace? Why wouldn't you do that with your work staff? Why wouldn't you get mental health trained and mental health awareness trained? Deal with things like overcoming loneliness or bereavement, understanding bereavement. There's a whole load of courses there that you can get help with. And it doesn't just help you in the workplace, it helps you in life.